contains the information, but you're also making a note in your brain that remembers that there's a note in your phone.
Yes.
So your brain is like a reference to another location in memory in the world. It's just how computers work,
Is there a atom of silicon in your brain physically associated with that memory?
I mean, there's plenty of silicon in your brain. I think silicon is the most common element on Earth by weight. Yeah, weirdly enough.
By weight.
By mass. I don't think silicon's all that common in like biological systems, at least not photosynthetic ones.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I had a prompt about satellite, what new mediums of expression that we haven't even thought of yet that the technology might make possible. It's like a, McLuhan medium, something message. The medium is the message.
The message is medium.com.
This is a new medium or like an iteration towards a new medium. So what does it make possible? Maybe where we can start there is what new kinds of expression did we start to see on Reddit that hadn't been seen before? Because this is a better Reddit. So if there's anything new that happened on Reddit, theoretically Satellite could expand on it.
I don't know. I was thinking yesterday about how it would be really cool to have a social network that where you actually did stuff. That was like
Together?
where or like the point of the social network wasn't content, it was like action. Because
That's a video game.
I mean like real world actual activity. Like because like meetup.com was a thing for a while until COVID killed it. Meetup.com, was like a thing where anyone, you could make like a meetup and invite people, and then it had like a physical location. You would go there and you would play Dungeons and Dragons, or you would do something more productive, perhaps.
No, only Dungeons and Dragons.
Only your post gets your meetup gets censored if it isn't Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, I don't know. So that was like a very simple iteration.
Christian get-togethers have to hide under the guise of D&D meetups. In this new totalitarian dystopia. No gatherings of 3 or more unless it's a D&D raid.
I'm gonna go raid the heathens. Yeah. I think it'd be cool if there was a... how you can make like a drag and drop. There's like drag and drop website builders.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if there was a configurable interface for non-programmers to create micro social networks. So I feel like in terms of what kind of expression I would like to see unlocked, it would be the capacity for the lay person to create their own social network and have it be just as powerful in principle as Mark Zuckerberg creating a social network or Donald Trump creating a social network, as
Well, it wouldn't.
Because
I'm not sure what the terms mean there, because Zuckerberg's thing was powerful in principle because it was a really good idea. It was a set of really good ideas. He did. Not everyone who makes a social media is going to have good ideas.
Of course, and most ideas are going to be terrible. You have to have the right idea at the right time and then actually do it for it to work.
So you just want the ability for that to happen.
To do it. I want the ability for people to actually do it and they try out their idea so that we can see if it's the right idea at the right time. Like like YouTube channel, by analogy with like YouTube, previous to YouTube, I guess you would have had to have like a TV studio or something and a broadcasting tower, but now it's like you can just be someone in your bedroom and predictably there's millions and millions of people who are doing something that's completely uninteresting, but there's a handful of people, actually not even just a handful, a good amount of people that are doing stuff that's really cool, so much so that it's hard to sort through all the cool stuff that there is now. So I feel like if that model of democratization of capability can be applied to social networks in general, to where if you wanted to start a kind of localized action-oriented social network, and it would be really cool. Like if you could have a social network whose was started by like a person, and the only purpose of this social network was just to like organize lunches or something at people's houses. That you could do that.
Yeah.
So it's not a business. It's not a club. It's not an association. There's no legal paperwork. No bullshit like that.
Yeah.
There's none of the barriers that prevent people from actually doing this, and it's just like. I feel like it would represent like a rebuilding of social capital in the world, because social capital is made out of human relationships. So
Yes.
if you facilitated activities with actual humans
Yes.
that was like productive, I think that would be like an off-ramp to the kind of like, you know, virtualized image of the world space that we're like slipping into, where we're just living more and more of our lives in a kind of simulation of reality, with like all the different varieties of like porn. Like there's like sex porn, there's room porn, there's architecture porn, travel porn, food porn. It's just porn. Like it's a simulation life. Basically, it's a general trend towards like the, you know.
I don't think the proliferation of all those contents is indicative of them actually like having staying power, though. I think it's just brand new technology, and so you're getting a shotgun spray of a lot of really bad content ideas, and because there's so much content, it's easy to think we're coming into this virtual sensorium, but it's most of that content is going to die off, because most of it is just like only passingly related to our human physical experience.
It doesn't facilitate human relationships, and thus it lacks staying power and reproductive potential.
Yeah.
As a meme, yeah.
Yeah. But did you like that movie last night?
Ghost in the Shell? Yeah, it was fantastic. That was a good recommendation.
Sick.
Yeah, it was. It was about what I expected, to be honest. I didn't expect anything specific. Like I obviously had no idea what it was about, other than it was like anime and there was probably some robots and stuff. But yeah, in terms of the mood of the movie, I was not disappointed. It was that was kind of what I took out of it mainly, was like, beyond any like specific philosophical quandaries or specific content, it was like the atmosphere and the aesthetic that made me excited about like cybernetic, early internet, tech noir 90s shit. It was cool. It's a cultural artifact that I feel like has been just like papered over by commercialized tech.
There's still a lot of excitement back then about the cyberpunk aesthetic.
Utopianism, idealism, hopefulness.
The stress is on how much of human potential is unlocked by things, instead of the Black Mirror stress of how fucked up and dark things are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking of...
You couldn't make that movie these days.
Sure you could.
It wouldn't be popular. People wouldn't take it seriously.
Sure it would be popular.
You think so? So what's stopping people? They're afraid to make that?
People don't have transcendent ideals right now. It's a very pessimistic, nihilistic culture right now. It's I've written about this in the Mandarin when we analyzed Vertigo from Hitchcock. We both noticed this blatant cutoff of an ending that like was kind of arbitrary and like the female protagonist just falls off a building and dies, and then the credits roll. And it's very sudden, and it's like, okay, I guess we just watched a tragedy, but it really just feels like it was the plot stopped before we reached catharsis. My point about it was it's a hell of a lot easier to write a tragedy than it is to write a legitimately happy ending. It's not that we're over happy endings and we're bored with them. It's that they're damn fucking hard to make. Because if you're gonna make a good happy ending, you have to live that happy ending. If it's a meaningful happy ending, then it has to have the episode 5 Empire Strikes Back shadow plunging. And if you're gonna write that part of your story good, you have to live that. So it's just really hard to make a convincing happy ending, and that's why you don't see it right now.
So, are we in Empire Strikes Back of technology?
Of technology?
Like, not technology, that's too broad of a word, of cyber technology.
Of cyberpunkness, yeah, it's mostly...
That's what I meant.
It's mostly a dystopian, depressing thing. Mostly all we can see is, like, how, like, not human all these kings of tech look to us. Like Zuckerberg.
Sorry, you know why people hate Zuckerberg? Because he looks like a robot. I think if he was an affable guy, no one would hate Facebook. I think he personally, apologies to Zuckerberg. What have I done? I've marked myself for the coming purge.
His open fish-eyed face just floats through the air.
He's like a disembodied Amobi and goes like... Yeah. He's like invented like a... He's everywhere.
Yes, he is everywhere.
Your phone just goes like... Just starts smoking. It's like Raiders of the Lost Ark or something.
Why people hate him? Because he's not like affable and relatable. He looks weird.
What if there was like what if there was a thing that would like, what's like the tech equivalent of like a holy relic that would make like Facebook logos like start like fizzling and smoking like in Raiders of the Lost Ark? You know, like in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, how like there's like that scene where like they put the Ark of the Covenant in like a crate and there's like a Nazi swastika stamp on the crate,
and so the stamp starts
smoking because like you have like good and evil like in I don't know, that was a stupid thing.
I guess if you made a Fairphone 4 but then like iterate it to like Fairphone 20 and then put it next to an iPhone,
or you installed like Facebook bloatware on a Fairphone, it would just like start like glitching out and like deinstalling itself. Okay, sorry. Please continue.
I just have to jump to not relevant. I mean, but in Ghost in the Shell, all the architecture is super brutal. Like, everyone's inside of a fucking machine.
Yeah.
Like, all the rooms are like, okay, you're inside of a complex machine right now.
Yeah.
All the walls, like, they aren't even walls. They're like parts.
There's like just like a
interlocking parts and instruments.
Yeah.
And like the hacker guy who phones the police chief to tell him his conspiracy theory, and then he goes off to hack some more with the like life jacket harness thing over his head.
Did I want that?
He's like living inside of a hacker van.
Yeah.
And the room is just machines. He's just living inside machines. And that's like really brutal in one sense and anti-human. But it's also like they're so focused on function. All the characters in that movie are so highly functioning.
Yeah.
That like every single object around them has to be serving a function. So like the room they're in is serving like 10, 20, 30 different functions it's not that they like want things to look good and like, oh, this is just how like architecture is now. No, it's like they have so much to do that like no single foot of space can go unused. Everything has to be a machine with a function.
Yeah, there's a kind of, you don't need to decorate the space that they're in with like houseplants because the whole thing is a living organism.
Yeah.
It's this cybernetically integrated.
Yeah, like it's the human mind maximally imprinted
Yeah.
on the world around them.
Yeah, that's not necessarily anti-human to...
Well, it's so hyperhuman.
Yeah, it's
in
hyperhuman.
such a hyper-specific direction that they can't like be bothered to be comfortable.
Yeah, like the helicopters are birds, basically. They're living things.
Yes.
The animals, the machines are living in a way. I was almost kind of like The Matrix is another, like in The Matrix, in the real world of The Matrix, the machines are like squids or whatever. Technology's gotten so advanced it starts to look like biology.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what would happen if you had hyper advanced technology. It would look like a biological organism because it'd be this incredibly subtle, optimized, integrated. You wouldn't have.
I think technology is just always going to be catching up to nature.
Yes. The biology is the example of hyper advanced, billions of years iterated technology. So we
Yes.
have a standard of what it looks like. We already know what like the end state of hyper advanced physical machines looks like.
Well, the word end state is weird to me because I think we often look at nature as an ended state because we're just seeing the point of it we're coming into.
Sure,
But we don't know where nature is heading. Like,
No.
even without human intervention, nature would be heading somewhere from here. It's not finished.
okay, but there's something in common. Like, if I look at a fossil of like a trilobite or something that was like fossilized 1 billion years ago or something, I don't know if that is accurate, but a long time ago, and I look at a modern beetle or something, I go, oh, they look pretty similar. They have something in common, and that's like this. Maybe it's like the way in which when technology is designed by evolutionary life, death, iteration, adaptation mechanisms, you get a distinctively non-mechanical look.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe not an end state, but it's the kind of technology that results from unguided, kind of like present tense intelligence.
It's a tricky word, but it's unconscious development.
Yeah.
Whereas what we're doing is conscious
or
development.
maybe like super conscious development or something like that. Hyper conscious.
No. Unconscious development. If it was hyper-conscious development, this aloe vera would be having dreams, and we would see octopus skin like reflections of its changing dreams from moment to moment. But it's unconscious development, so we see like a 1 billion year long process very, very slowly acting itself in front of us, where it's just standing there.
Right, but
as far as we're concerned.
But on a maybe it's like consciousness on a different time scale that to us appears as evolution, but over billions of years is like a thought.
Of course,
Something-
consciousness is a very tricky word that
is.
depends on the time frame. And given enough time, the matter-making mind thing, I think, does switch and become mind obviously was making matter that whole time. If you open up the time scale of what you're looking at wide enough. Because given enough time, I think the aloe vera plant will become conscious and will start like iterating its own aloe vera-ness willingly, and then it'll like eventually go back to the beginnings of aloe vera time and like design its own entry into physical the physical world, and then it'll be like chicken and the egg, who made the aloe vera plant?
Yeah.
I'm riffing off the end of Interstellar here, where the aliens that were saving Earth were actually future humans.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I need to rewatch that movie. Well, yeah, I've thought about this before. Like, okay, so, you know, you got the ocean. You got the ocean, and you got dolphins, and a bunch of other animals. Ocean dolphins, right? There's these dolphins, and they're in the ocean. The ocean's a bunch of water, and the dolphins is like this one kind of animal that just swims around and eats fish. And okay, from one perspective, you could be like, oh, the dolphin evolved there, and then that's why it's there. Sure, but also you could take a perspective that like the ecosystem had an idea for a dolphin. There didn't have to be a dolphin. There's all kinds of types of animals in the ocean that don't exist but totally could. Mm-hmm. But a type of animal is like a thought. It's like a thought about what's possible. It's like, let's try this. It's an idea.
Yes.
So,
and most of the ideas die off in the form of evolution. Most of the animals
just like
don't work.
Like in my mind, which is a super timescale sped up version of evolution, probably there's all kinds of thoughts that are in my brain swimming around, vast majority of which don't go anywhere because they're dumb. And then there's like a few that percolate to the top, which then make their way out of my mouth and into this conversation. Mm-hmm. So they've transcended the medium of just whatever my neurons are doing, and they're starting to get into like this. Now they're getting into the digital world. They're escaping.
I kind of think, again, off the mind making matter conceit, that the dolphins existed independent of if the ecosystem had an ocean or not, and the dolphins are like multi-dimensionally dispersed across a lot of different canvases, and in this canvas of planet Earth, the dolphin planet, where all dolphins come from, all dolphins go to heaven.
No, I'm pretty sure dolphins go to hell.
It's probably this very hedonistic, very sexually strange heaven.
Yeah, it's just like a dolphin orgy.
Yes.
They're like swimming around in a huge moat.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm glad I chose dolphins as the example, because I could have chosen anything, but
you chose a very horny, murderous animal.
I feel like dolphins are likely to be interdimensional.
They
more
are
so than other creatures.
It's easy to see a dolphin mind
easily,
independent of dolphins as such.
Right.
But I think the dolphin mind focused on Earth and then went, okay, what are the rules here? What is the one niche in which my own native dolphin way of dolphining can find a way into this very specific planet with this very specific saline solution that the ocean is, and it just so happens to make this kind of a fish who breathes like this and talks like this and has fins that go like that. But then in a different planet, 500,000 light years over this way, the same dolphin mind is trying to instantiate itself there, and it finds a very specific niche that looks like deterministic evolution in that sense, where like, oh, this is where I can find a way into this planet, and it's some totally different organism of like octopus tree time.
You better not let dolphins...
But they're both dolphins.
If dolphins knew you were calling them a fish, then they might something to say about that.
Sorry.
Yeah, apologies to dolphins.
Are they whale? They're just dolphins.
Yeah, I think
they're specific.
Ceatons or those.
Oh, okay. Mammal.
Yeah, they have tits.
Weird.
It is weird. It's fucking weird. It's weird. Yeah. Well, okay. So you think of this as like life, almost like a platonic forms, like ideal platonic forms. There's a reservoir of potentiality that exists in some sense.
Yes, I think physical reality is a tip of the iceberg side effect of a more vital, more real stage that's happening.
So, yeah, okay, so yeah, I think we were talking about this last night. So, going with this mind, matter from mind way of looking at things, would you, like, in that, that's so, this ideal Platonic realm, is that physical?
Short answer, no, this is physical. But there's some more real than physical thing from which physicality springs.
That's very interesting.
That and related to this is that there isn't dispersed spaces and dispersed times. It's one spacious present, which all things are coexisting.
Like DMT hyperspace.
Yeah, at the center of every atom, at the center of every mind, at the center of every moment. And from that centrality, a thought occurs, and it kaleidoscopes out into numberless dimensions in a form that's unique to that dimension.
And then tries to find where it can take in physical world.
Yes. And the physical third dimension of planet Earth in 2021 is one light facet from that central spark. Like the Big Bang is the stillness inside of this very moment. And that's where all dolphins come from.
Yeah, I think I learned that in high school biology too. That was like chapter 3. And I asked my teacher and she said, "Shut up. Stop questioning it." No, but I think what you're saying, like on some level, resonates with my experience of consciousness, of thought, of thinking. I mean, that's where I feel thoughts come from. I feel oftentimes that thoughts and ideas and inspiration, vision, comes from a kind of place outside of myself. That's where I can actually concretely relate what you're saying to my own life. Is in my own. Sometimes I'll have the sense. Oftentimes I have the sense that like an idea is like, oh, I'm glad that I found that. Mm-hmm. It's like, where did I find it?
There goes Christian. Christian! Hey. Yeah, you should listen to this one tomorrow.
Nice. Cool.
Podcastception.
Where were you at? What were you saying? Just thoughts and where thoughts
Yeah, I was
come
saying
from.
that I think what you're that like I have had that experience before where when I have an idea or like some, not really an idea, but like when I have some vision for some new thought, I feel like a new thought is something that I bump into in the dark, or there's like distinctly unexpected content a lot of times that I go, I have no idea where I got this image from, like dreams or something like that. So I wonder if that's, I mean, for me, that's like probably where I can relate to this concretely is because this process, this evolutionary process is taking place on a time scale that is perceptible from my conscious vantage point, which can only perceive things that are on the time scale of like seconds, minutes, hours, days, years.
I was thinking of like, what's the newest thought I had?
Yeah.
And the last new thought I had was purely textural and feeling and rhythmic. And that's often how a poem will start for me. Mm-hmm. And that was the first thing I did today was grab the legal pad and write out a first line of a poem. And it just came from like the rhythm my brain was in and what words catch with that specific dreamy rhythm my mind was in. And it's like means nothing except indicating a kind of shape my brain was doing. And then, like, I wrote the words in the sentence that was in my mind, but it was, like, very word salady.
Is it worth repeating?
I just...
Don't have it in your mind right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something about, like, splitting the world open. And then I went from there to, like, a binary of dreams and life, and then how they should be integrated to make both more enjoyable. But that was all, like, spinning off,
right.
like, can I turn this into a coherent statement?
Right.
Like, the first line was not, like, based on anything but a shape.
Yeah, I think a lot of times a vision is like the gemstone, and then all of the thoughts around it are like the metal frame that packages and emphasizes the thing.
Yeah.
That's the baser material that's just exists to like buttress the
Yes. Yeah. Okay, I have a thing here. Where, like, okay, in the example of the poem, like, I then spun it into a poem.
Yeah.
But those words are a kind of illusion, Hall of Mirrors thing. Like, I spun those words to justify the fact of what those first two lines just felt like doing.
Yes.
And now the meaning I made out of the whole stanza is now the meaning a reader is going to take from it. But the poem's fooling them, because that's not the thrust of the poem. The thrust of the poem was this feeling and this shape. And so words are pointing at a thing that's ineffable, but obfuscating it and getting you fascinated with the words. And there's a kind of trick there. And I had this thought watching Ghost in the Shell as well, because I know the dialogue so fucking well.
Yeah, you were pulling quotes out of last night. That was great.
Yeah.
I felt like last night I was like Googling in your brain. Like, I was just like throwing out, like, remember that line, something about like you're limiting, and you're like, then you like pulled out that quote just from that one or two words I said, and you're like,
yes.
thank you. Yeah, I don't have that kind of memory.
But because I know the dialogue so well, I know what is revealing the spirit of the film, and I know is just surface plot exposition, jargon, espionage noir, mystery, like the ins and outs of political fighting, like this political faction fighting with this political faction and doing a conspiracy move to do that, and so it stood out, or the idea last night watching Ghost in the Shell was that a lot of these words are obfuscation act, and even the philosophical words are an obfuscation act. The philosophical thrust of this movie is not in the words; it's in the gestalt totality of it. And you can watch and rewatch that final marriage scene of the puppet master with Major Kusanagi, and the more you pay attention to the words, the more the meaning of that moment is going to escape you, because all they can do with 5 minutes of linear English speech is like point at the very tip of the implications of what's happening there. And that's why you have to make a movie about it. It's not just the puppet master saying that copying myself is not enough. I have to merge with someone that is not myself so that our genomes can like add to each other and make a brand new being. It's not just that speech. It's also the fact that they're both women. It's also the fact that they're talking to each other with their minds. It's also the fact that even to have the conversation, the major is inside the puppet master's body, and the puppet master is inside the major's body. It's also the fact that puppet master is completely genderless, yet obviously masculine and speaking with a man's voice, and the fact that the major is female, but again, arbitrarily so, because they're both free of form. They're so free of form, they're just swapping bodies just because it happens to be technologically more convenient to switch bodies.
Yeah, like in
before
the
they
very
start talking to each other.
in the next scene after that, when she wakes back up, the guy, he's like, "Oh yeah, sorry about the body. There's whatever we could get on the black market," and she's like, "That's cool."
Yeah, she's in a totally different body in the next scene and
whatever.
very relaxed about it.
Right.
It's not just the speech they have together about cells and mutation and the evolution of human species. It's all those things I just said. It's also the visual of an angel descending from the broken skylight on her with white feathers falling down and her eyes opening up and her hair starts blowing back as if she's in a wind. And I have a lot more on that language as obfuscation thing, but I think I should save it for when I see Dune.
Okay.
Later today and make a podcast about that with Jade.
Yeah. You're getting warmed up about that, huh?
I can already foresee what the director's use of language will be in that. And it will... I'm assuming pessimistically that he's going to curtail the spirit of Dune drastically to make an understandable, digestible thing. It's going to use language to dumb down Dune, where this is one of the philosophic thrusts of Dune itself is don't trust the words coming out of my mouth. Like, look beneath the words to the intent. And look beneath your perception of the conversation to your own inner resonance inside.
Yeah, that's very distinctive about Frank Herbert's writing style, I found, was his focus on the meta conversation that was always happening in the midst of every conversational exchange.
Yes.
And how he has this perspective and you get to see the inner thoughts of both speakers simultaneously.
Yes.
And at first I thought that was kind of like gratuitous, but then as the book went on I was like, actually no, he does it quite masterfully, in a way that contributes to something as opposed to just like lazily like voiceover narrator type telling.
Which is literally what David Lynch's Dune does.
Really?
One of the reasons.
God.
One of the reasons why it's one of the worst films I've ever tried to watch is because it literally has a voiceover in their head of what they think, and then they say something, and then the other guy has voiceover and thinks something.
It's like violating that adage, like show don't tell.
Yes.
It's violating that principle, but
yes.
Somehow in Dune, when you read it, it doesn't strike you that way. It's maybe because the conversation, the words that are like written as spoken in the book are themselves kind of sparing, and they're not dressed up with all this extra stuff. It's more like this. There's some crumbs. Everything isn't spoon-fed to you. I was pretty confused for the first couple chapters, to be honest. I wasn't sure what kind of universe this was, if it was...
Right.
And at some point, I got the vibe. I was like, okay, this is... All right. Once I got comfortable in the setting of the story, I started taking a lot more interest in what people were saying, because I realized that it wasn't there to just create a mood like, ooh, they're futuristic...
No, he was literally trying to give you as much information as possible.
He was talking about the people, not the place or the anything. The place is almost kind of an afterthought. It's like, this is a stage. This is just, don't worry about it.
Right.
Here's the characters.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, the I don't know where this is coming from, but the people, the settings should proceed from the characters being focused on in literature and in cinema. The setting should be a reflection of the focused character's mindset.
how incredibly opposite modern storytelling is from that.
Where it's all about setting.
Yeah.
And there's no character development.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's almost like you start from in a world where, this is the main thing.
Well,
here's all these people that just like service this thing we already told you.
This is the only possible result of devaluing the individual and over-focusing on identity and collectivist groups and labeling the ego, which is the most individualistic part of the mind possible, labeling the ego as satanic. And you can't get any kind of literature in cinema except devaluing characters themselves and just erasing the hero from the whole thing and making it all about anti-heroes and nihilism and fucking trick acts with plots and the character's just this blank puppet walking through a plot.
Yeah, like superhero movies are the ultimate expression of this, where if you go, hey, have you seen the 20th the Batman or the Superman movie? It's like, yeah, who's Superman in that one? Is he still Superman? Like, no, well, yeah, he's just Superman again. Like, did Superman change throughout the movie, or did he just be extra? Is he extra Superman-y now? And in the sequel, it's going to be like, all right, we're going to pick up right where we left off. He's still Superman. Do Superman stuff again. Like, new bad guys, same good guys. Oh yeah. Like, okay. You're just like, it's like a rinse and repeat cycle of where the characters don't have an arc because they're already kind of these like cultural little bricks or whatever, these little paving stones that are just kind of like creating a nice little collage of like, this is our shared pop culture reality, so we're gonna do a film where they do the thing that fits with this.
Yes.
And no one's gonna really complain. It's pretty great. There was a lot of video editing that went into this, let me tell you. I don't know. I don't know why I always pick on superhero movies, because I'm not really that sophisticated with film, and so that's an easy target that I can like punch on, and it makes me feel smart when I do that. But I
guess this is why I have to be making podcasts with Jade.
Sure,
because
certainly
that's where films get to happen with me.
Right. If you're going to, and I have no problem admitting that, if you're going to get into a very deep discussion of literature criticism that isn't going to, that's really going to break new ground, then I expect you and Jade probably spend more time thinking about that.
We do.
Right.
Did you see any prompts in there that caught your eye?
Yeah.
I had one about religion.
Yeah.
I basically called Christians cowards.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just read it. I think this was something we're talking about, this was coming off of this idea that climate change is kind of like the stand-in psychologically for the apocalypse to this in the secular mind, and I guess I haven't watched this, but I guess this guy, what's his name, Michael Schellenberger, did he say at some point, this is I think what you said, I was convinced it's psychologically healthy to have faith regarding returning to Christianity. So was this guy, did he say he returned to Christianity?
This guy was a lefty environmentalist. Mm-hmm. Like, he won crazy, like, worldwide awards mm-hmm. for his environmental work mm-hmm. in, like, 2008. And then, like, slowly got more and more red-pilled as to the stagnancy of the liberal movement in general and the ineffectiveness and destructiveness of what he calls apocalyptic environmentalism, where the environmental stage we're in today is framed only in apocalyptic terms, and the narrative really just makes you depressed and works to convince you that there's nothing you can do to change things. The narrative now of environmentalism is just that it's too late. And all we can do is try and make things less bad. And so he was coming around over the years to this of grappling with how to address environmental responsibility in a way that's optimistic and empowers individuals to do what they can. He was saying to finish one of his books, he eventually got to a writer's block that required him returning to Christianity.
Interesting, okay.
And regaining an existential faith or like a transcendent ideal to focus on before he could go forward and with his optimism.
And you said in this prompt,
yes,
I'm seeing an increasing frustration in me over people either staying agnostic, atheistic, or reverting to stale Christianity.
Both are wrong.
Where's our frontiering instinct? We can do it with rockets, but not philosophy. It's obviously a new religion that needs to be clarified to meet today's needs.
A new religion is necessary to meet today's needs. It is fucking lazy it's just lazy and unrealistic and ignoring the facts of like what happens when you take mushrooms or LSD or even smoke fucking weed. It's ignoring the things that happen inside you when you take those substances to persist in agnostic, atheistic materialism. And it's just this false start abortion lazy thing to go, so I'll just go back to the good old days, I guess, of reading the Bible and accepting Jesus Christ into my heart. Like, that's the wrong fucking direction. Like, we went forward from Christianity into scientism, and now we gotta go forward from scientism into something better than both.
Yeah, I remember, I used to think that society, when I went through my phase of becoming a godless materialist, after having been raised in the stale Christianity of my youth.
Yes.
I remember going through this phase where I thought I was utterly convinced that society would just be better off without a religion, and that, basically John Lennon, imagine there's no religion, whatever. I don't know.
There's no heaven.
There's no heaven. There's no religion. We could all just be a brotherhood of man. Kumbaya. Yeah, I don't know if I think that anymore. I think that I've come around to the idea that humans are deeply, deeply religious. Like, we can't. Well, it's not just some quirk of our biology. There's something about nature that is profoundly spiritual, and that
it makes you evolutionarily competitive to have a transcendent ideal.
Beyond that, I think
you have a huge advantage if
Sure.
you have an transcendent ideal that you're focused on.
I don't disagree with that, but I think that beyond the advantage of having a transcendent ideal in your life, there is a transcendent ideal in the world. It's very obvious. Like, you're living life, motherfucker.
As
you know what
evidenced
I mean?
by the growth principle see around you?
Just evidenced by, like, I don't really know how to rationally justify this. It's a feeling.
It's an experience.
It's an experience. It's something that's hard to put into words, but there's something very profound about just being here. And that's like something, that awareness, that type of consciousness, was institutionalized for thousands of years, and then was like shattered by the incredible whiplash effect of modernity.
Oh, it was shattered by its own inflexibility.
Yes. Well, and it sort of sowed the seeds of its own destruction, or it didn't, not its own destruction, but it forced itself back into the unconscious because of the excess of like the simulation that we created. We created such technology and such integration and the ability to move around the world and merge cultures and traditions and completely change our lifestyle whilst still surviving and feeding ourselves and just completely dominating the material world, that we for a second thought, oh, well, this is back to the Teal's whole riff is that religion, we're going to put that back in the closet for a while and just be good with the fact that we're not killing, we're not Catholics and Protestants aren't killing each other anymore, and we're all
just focus on science for a while.
Let's just go to Kentucky Fried Chicken and have a good time, and shop and just be interested in music and art and all that stuff that we now think now seems like just kind of like mealy mouth liberal, art or whatever. That's not a substitute for spirituality. That's like a facade that tries to capture the aesthetic. Who's someone who probably is closest, who's done the best job trying to creating a religion out of this generalized secular spirituality is Alex Gray, who's created the Cosm, the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors or whatever it is.
And he's already established his own church.
Yes. He has probably done the best job of anyone of trying to reclaim the spirit without really saying anything. But still, it's ultimately unsatisfying. A civilization can't be founded on cool stained glass and maybe I'm selling short what he's doing.
You are.
I probably am. But I think that I brought him up because I'm trying to pay him a compliment. Yes. I think he's doing a good job. But I don't think it has to. I think it has to go beyond that. There has to be things that reaffirm your courage and the sense of belonging and the sense of life, fire, meaning, profoundness. It has to get into your personal life.
For me, it's always been the seed of the new transcendent ideal for me for 10 years now has always been Jane Roberts and the statement in her books that you create your reality. And those two books of hers in the 70s birthed the entire New Age movement. So a whole lot of nonsense came out after that New Age movement. But Camille Paglia puts it where the 60s happened and psychedelia, and that was an outgrowth of Carl Jung's understandings about individuation.
Yes.
Carl Jung, individuation, psychedelics, hyper freedom, hyper discovery of yourself, and then it left leftism politically, and leftism politically got subsumed by French postmodern radical communist stuff, while that Jungian psychedelic hippie 60s thing veered off into 70s New Ageism. Mm-hmm. But the first cause statement of 70s New Ageism was Jane Roberts going, you create your reality, and the present moment is the leverage point from which you do so, and you only perceive your own constructions. And that's the personalizing and democratizing of the transcendent image. It's that your experience is yours, it's in your hands. There's something you can do right now to take the reins of your experience.
Yeah, that feels like religion to me. That's what religion is at its core, is an assumption of power.
Is pointing out the seat of power inside your soul.
That's what I mean by assumption of power, not sublimation to power. You're assuming it. Yes. It's something that you are, even the word subsume, to sublimate power is to put it outside, or to put it onto something else, and to assume is to take on.
And then that's
so if you assume responsibility, you have more responsibility. If you assume power, you assume a standpoint of, it's kind of like what the original, that's what gave Protestantism its initial power to break away from the Catholic Church, was this idea that you could, you didn't need a mediator.
Yes.
And it was Protestantism, it's literally Protestant, it was anti-institutional from its core.
Yes.
And then it lived long enough to see itself become the institution.
Yes,
so, right.
But at its time, it was aggressively applying the Christian principle. The kingdom of God is within me. It's within me. I am a child of God. not this fucking building.
Yeah, so in some sense, the New Age movement is a strain of Christianity that's like the mystical strain.
It is.
And then you have whatever we have now, I guess, like the religion of academic bureaucracies or something, or wokeism or something, or it's kind of like this, it's the more institutional state religion guilt processing. Yeah, this is incredible. Remember last night I was riffing on that whole thing about like China, how it has like the Chinese soul has like this. My view of it is that
the Chinese goal has Confucian authoritarianism in tension with its
Taoist
their
mysticism.
Taoist mysticism, trying to resurface.
Yeah,
from
and
inside.
so I had this thought the other day that like, and I was trying to remember this last night, but I couldn't remember it. But yeah, in the East, you have this polarity and this tension between Confucianism and Taoism, and that represents the kind of like state collective and the individual mystic kind of, respectively. And then in the Western context, you have the same thing, but it's through the lens of Christianity.
In the West, it's like Christianity versus old stagnant Christianity.
Well, yeah, because to us, we have an inside perspective on it, so it's harder to see the fact that there is a polarity, that there's like a bifurcation of our religious content of our civilization. Is it bifurcated into kind of like this kind of like private hippie mysticism kind of new age stuff, and then you saw how the institutions took that mysticism and wrapped it up in a bunch of 20th century baggage and called it secularism, which is of course a religion in its own right, but it's just like a state religion.
It's not a religion in its own right. The impulse for religion acts inside of it.
It's a facsimile.
I'm gonna roll the cigarette. Yeah, I was about to go into a Dune thing next. And I was like, no, I'm gonna save that for later today again.
I mean, you should just do it twice. Who cares?
Sure.
It's not like anyone's going to watch this podcast and then watch the other one and be like, you already talked about that.
I would.
Yeah, but most people are you. But there's probably a few other Alex Lights in the world.
How many?
Handful. A handful. They're lurking. You'll probably never meet them, but
I think the bigger my career gets, the more I'll flush them out.
You're gonna meet yourself one day, like,
yes. And I think the bigger my career gets, the more the Alex Light gene of every human will come alive in populations in general.
Yeah, that's true. It's weird how famous people start to call forth instantiations of themselves.
Like that's a very popular conception of Trump and Trump's America was, oh, well, the Trump gene's gonna come awake and all these assholes.
There's all these little like mini Trumps.
Yeah, it's gonna spawn mini Trumps everywhere.
Driving around in their like pickup trucks and just like doing Trumpy stuff. Yeah,
which I think is wrong. There,
Trump doesn't have a monopoly on that kind of thing.
And the people that liberals are afraid of, like January 6ers, aren't. So many of them are followers. They're just more sheep. Like there aren't that many people like Donald Trump. Like there's Kanye, there's Elon Musk, there's Donald Trump. That big dick energy,
Yeah, it's kind of a very specific niche expression of that energy. I don't know if it could exist in a way that we would recognize if we weren't living in the world of social media 2021, or whatever 2016, post-2016 reality is. I think that we, in previous times, those people wouldn't have found their way into politics. Well, they would have been like Kanye. They would have just been rappers. I think Trump is an exception because no one objected to Trump before he was a politician. People were just like, oh, the apprentice guy. Yeah, that dude's a... no one like had this like burning hatred for Trump when he was just your standard issue TV man. Like, yeah, he probably grew up some women. Well, so did most of those old guys in show business. Yeah, we all know that that's just like a dirty corner of Hollywood that we just, but like suddenly when it got into the Democratic, like the cathedral, it was like, oh my God. Oh my, like entertainment is spilling over into our pop culture. What have we done? Like, you kind of dug that grave for yourself, didn't you?
Yeah.
With like the endless fixation on celebrities and stuff. Like, maybe that's why people hate Trump so much, is that it's showing you what you've done to your culture. When you knock out the pillars and you say, well, nothing matters, nothing means anything, every idea is just as important as everyone else, you get Trump. Because Trump's like, yeah, and it's me, bitch.
Yes.
And I'm going to say something stupid, and then you're responsible for it because you put me here.
Yes.
And then, no, we didn't. So Trump's kind of like he's like a mirror held up to America in some sense, and we fucking hate it.
Yes.
He's like, shut up. So I think that's where the visceral reaction comes from. Helicopter.
What else do you think about Ghost in the Shell?
Ghost in the Shell. So the aesthetics were cool. I think that I want to get back to a world. I have hope that cyberpunk won't be completely appropriated by like pop culture. I have hope that it will yet survive, and that there can be a more open source participatory version of tech dystopia that we can all contribute to. Because I'd be more okay with that, I think, if more people could like fuck with technology instead of having just technology fucking with everyone. Like, I want the direction to be changed. That was what was cool about the characters' relationship to technology in Ghost in the Shell, is that they felt like they were very much using it.
It was an extension of their will.
Yes, it wasn't a bunch of people, what's her name, Major Kusunawa?
Major Matoko Kusanagi.
Kusanagi, thank you. See, this is the Google thing I'm talking about. She wasn't like on her phone the whole time scrolling Instagram. She was like walking around, like using technology to move through the world and interact in physical spaces and do things. And I was like, that's fucking sick. That is what technology should be used for, is like a tool. It should be like wielded. It shouldn't be used to create a zoo enclosure. Like, that's the kind of we've gotten this unhealthy relationship with technology where we go like, oh, it's an entertainment system. Like we're just going to use the power of the internet to build an even better TV. So it's like television culture just made more interactive, like VR and stuff. Why is VR seen? Why is it that VR is mainly understood to be this dystopian thing that is just going to distance people more and more and more and more from the world? I don't think people thought VR was going to be that in the very beginning. I think people had an idea that VR was going to be something that enabled greater amounts of participation with the world. And then that became kind of untenable because...
Like, that's what the fat dreadlocks guy, that's his shtick.
Oh, what's it, that Netflix document. What is the name of that? Shit, I can't remember the. Yeah. Why can't I pull this out? Why can't I get this name right now?
It's something French, his last name. I have it marked.
Isn't it called like the something game or the something?
Oh, I don't know what the documentary is. I just
Okay.
like know his name has
Yeah,
a French looking
That
last
dreadlocks.
name.
Yeah, the philosopher of technology or whatever he is.
Yeah, his shtick, because he helped build VR in its first days, and his shtick is he wants these things to be objective standpoint from which to appreciate physical reality
Oh, really? He
in a
said that?
new way,
Cool.
and see that it's more truly beautiful than we ever could have seen before we had options to like step outside of it a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of that really echoes.
Like he sees the ability to step outside of it and interact with different realities as a means to the end of seeing how sacred physical reality is. And I remember, anecdote time, watching a
sure.
3D movie. It was the year Avatar James Cameron came out, so that's still the only good 3D movie that's been made, still. And but for a while you were seeing countless other movies in 3D, and they were all shitty. But the shitty Johnny Depp, Tim Burton, Alice in Wonderland came out that year. It was also in 3D, and I was drunk on wine, watching it in theaters in 3D, and then I went out into the theater's hallway, and just, you know how hotel hallways are like very surreal?
Yeah.
It was that kind of experience. I stepped out a little bit drunk. I'd been seeing this 2 points of depth type 3D for an hour straight, and I went outside and looked at this long hallway of identical doorways and identically repetitive designs on the carpet, and I was seeing like, oh, there's like 20 points of depth in front of me right now. Like, this is so much more 3D than 3D right now. This is beautiful. And it's just physical reality and perceiving things and seeing a 2 points of depth movie thing to try and express what three-dimensionality is like shook me out of what I do in normal waking life, which is to just collapse my entire view down to 2D flat canvas, when it's really this pillar is a different level of depth than that pillar, and the fence is a third level of depth separate from both of these, and but your mind, just for convenience's sake, collapses that all down into a 2D canvas that you're not really paying attention to.
Okay, so movies are expressing something about the world that they're trying to highlight the three-dimensional, beautiful world that is possible, and then you realize the world is, actually, the original OG three-dimensional world that's even cooler than a movie. It's so cool that movie is part of it. I think that transposing that to the social networks, I want to see social networks become like the real world. Like, I think that the ultimate state of a social network would be indistinguishable from what we call life. Like life, I mean, even without the internet, we have social networks. It's called culture and community and activities and religion even, and economies and like organized activity that involves the contributions of multiple people's minds to some enterprise.
So I guess I'm riffing on what that could physically look like. It's like we're live streaming the pod, and then it's an AR interface, and every person that's in the chat watching the stream is adding one more visual element to the subjective experience each of us are having. Like the lighting of the patio changes the more people are streaming.
I wasn't thinking of that. That's one. That's reminding me of what you. What's that thing we were talking about a few pods ago, where it was like that Twitch stream composite character, where like the
Code Miko,
yeah, where like the audience was like could like choose which words and stuff kind of go on her avatar.
Yeah, and the audience can change her clothes and stuff.
I think that's obviously, yeah, sure, that's one application of it. I'm thinking of it even in more general terms, that like a social network becoming like real life would mean that a social network would stop being focused on just images, videos, and audio and messages. And it would be more...
physicality.
It would start to look more... there would be less and less of a distinction between a social network and like a business enterprise and a community. That you would create something that looks more like an integrated... And it sounds terrible, right? It sounds dystopian, like, oh, I don't want my social network to be my business and my community. Well, that's because our social networks suck.
Yes.
But if you had this kind of integration where like you could instead of just being friends, like friending someone, where you just create this empty connection that goes, well, now I have your contact information and you can see my feed and I can message you. That's a low bandwidth relationship. If there was a social networks that facilitated much more powerful types of relationships that are currently, like for instance, they're currently...
Okay, so what? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the most powerful thing is the most powerful aspect of human connection is eyes, seeing eyes, and you are physically feeling the sound waves hit your ear of what's coming out of my body to communicate to you. So a more powerful social media would be expressing that physical phenomenon in its own social media way of like, if it's not literally being as powerful as looking someone in the face while you're talking to them, it's expressing this digital poetry of what that experience is like.
I'm saying beyond that. It's not social, like social networks are a superclass of social media. So, like, I think we have to stop focusing on social media. We've allowed social networks to become social media, but social networks should also include other types of relationships that are not media. That they should include relationships that are like currently, being managed by institutions like rent contracts and stuff like that. Like there's this legal superstructure that is mediating our lives, that is a social network in some sense. Like we're building societies with legal technology that create contracts amongst people that are flimsy and have high barriers and are like very vulnerable to centralized manipulation. So I think that social networks need to expand to take on a greater role in the day-to-day affairs of people so that people can actually have power over their own lives that isn't like sucked out by the various leeches and parasites of society. Like you could have for instance, I'm imagining so it's a concrete example of this. There could, like couchsurfing.com was an example of a social network that actually had an amazing concrete effect on the world.
Okay.
It was a social network where you could make a profile and then you could just people could send requests to stay with you at your house when they were traveling, and you could accept or decline, and then you could leave reviews for each other. That's a very simple kind of social network that's like a hospitality network that's focused on solving a problem of like when you go into a new city, you can either pay $200 for a hotel, you can rent an Airbnb, or you can be like, well, I have something interesting to offer in just my own life. I'm coming from a different country, so what I'm going to do is exchange my interesting company for your hospitality, and then we both benefit.
Yeah.
And so that type of physical interaction that isn't media, but and there's no maybe you have a photo or something, but the point isn't to create a media representation, it's to actually create actual connections.
Yeah.
So I think that you could take that idea of a social network and make it more general purpose to where we could start engineering the actual physical world according to using the technology of the internet to actually affect the physical world, which would probably be more gratifying, and it would be a lot harder to monopolize and control that type of activity. You can, because you can create like deep fakes, you can create algorithms that show people images and create a narrative and use social media to control people. But maybe the reason why it's so easy to control people with social media is because it's just media. It's like we're watching a movie. If you had to start interacting with people face to face as part of your social network interactions, I think it'd be a lot less toxic, because people don't treat each other like shit generally when you're face to face, because there's so much more empathy, like what you were saying about how like the eyes and the presence, and like you can sort of see the humanity in someone when you're in the same space with them. Something like 2020 COVID lockdowns probably wouldn't have had the same interaction with social networks if they were more in person and more action oriented. I see 2020 as being an example of what happens when you have a social media focused culture where the social networks exist and they serve as like a crutch, where like you can have easily even less human interaction because you have these substitutes.
Yeah.
Just go on Zoom,
right?
So if Zoom didn't exist, I don't think people would have been okay with being locked down as long as they had. If you literally couldn't see your loved ones. So we're almost like making it harder for us to get connection when we're building the tools that are like stand-ins for it. So we should kind of reverse that trend and start making social networks that are like that are de-digitized, or they're still digital, but the relevant content is like experiences, activities, relationships, contracts, mutually beneficial enterprises.
Yes.
Things that are like, hey, I have this resource, you have this resource, we all have houses in Chico. What can we do? What can we gain by organizing our space in a way that we all have more? Because like, I'm not using, like this porch is a great thing. And right now, the people who benefit from this porch are people that I trust. Why? Because I don't want strangers sitting here. And nobody wants random strangers who they don't trust doing anything with them, because we're...
Yeah.
So, like, the more trust you create in the world, it's like trust is this thing that creates...
If you can more accurately express trust earned in concrete, uncensorable terms,
and
that's the social capital that you're always harping on about.
Yes. I think the world needs to be... We need to start building accumulations of social capital, because those are the bastions of society.
That's already happening. We just haven't coined it.
Right. We haven't coined this yet.
I have to go pee.
Right.
I can't wait to have made a magnum opus to balance out hells.
Yeah, I guess you're gonna be right back at the center after that, huh? You're gonna be like the grocery bags in two hands, huh? Gonna be like a little more balance. It's easier to carry two heavy weights than it is one.
Mm-hmm. And an engine, a meta being will emerge from having both of those albums. The same way 1 point is only 1 point, but 2 points makes a line, which implies a trajectory. It's a whole another magnitude of reality. So to have these two magnum opuses that illustrate now a line and a greater physical space that line is drawn inside, it'll create a new being of me, of I can now switch between two polarities the way you walk, left foot, right foot. Now I'll have some metaphysical ability to traverse space and time in a way I've never had before.
I'm just curious to see what you're going to do after this.
more practically speaking, I'll be able to perform heavy metal sets that can do happy and sad and angry and happy and take you from one to the other.
When did you realize that you were doing this? Like, did you go into making hells knowing that you were going to create this hell that then would then necessitate the creation of its mirror image or of its counterbalance?
No.
When did you realize
Not at
that?
all. I like appetites and tastes and cravings. Like I was making hells out of survival, out of necessity, out of passion for heavy metal. I needed to just set the record straight on what progressive metal was supposed to sound like. So it's not like Hells isn't like a revolutionary album. It's like the archetypal heavy metal album. That's why it's called Hells, and that's why the band's called The Creator. It's like, this is just the source root.
It's not like particular.
It's the core of where heavy metal darkness, like the melodic minor scale, comes from. Maybe the way Space Odyssey is the core of sci-fi films, so it's like more neutral of a film.
Yeah, it's right.
So I was just making that just because I had to, and then having made that, I was like, okay, I just spent 4 fucking years in a very specific set of colors and sounds and textures and themes, and like I didn't know I had to make something happy. I just knew like, well, we're not ready to play live yet, but we have to be getting better at playing even though we're still not performing, so it has to be faster metal so that we're still forced to improve as musicians even though we're not performing yet. And I just need this whole career to move faster. So that's the statement of the album, is fast.
Accelerant.
And then from there, I was like, okay, fast isn't enough. What are the colors? What are the moods? What are the feelings? What are the tastes?
Yeah, right.
And then I found J-pop and Haru Nemuri's album, Earth to Haru. Haru to Siura is the album name. This J-pop, punk, exuberance album of really bright neon colors and fast, fun, like joy turned up so loud it becomes like painful, and just happy, joyful, like bouncing. And then finding that album was like, oh, it's not just accelerant, it's ecstasy. And the ecstatic, like, jumping puppy, but like fireworks like jump out of its eyes every time it leaps into the air.
The escape from hell.
Oh, it's hell. There is no hell. There was never a hell. There are no bad feelings. It is, everything feeds ecstasy.
Even hells.
Yes. Joy is the core of existence.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that as a world statement. I'm
Right,
saying
but
this is the world Accelerant sees. This is the world according to Accelerant.
I wonder what your third album's gonna be. Very curious about that.
It'll start out very practical again, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Of just, what do I physically need?
Right.
We're physically gonna need to perform after the second album, which will be, okay, we need to find the players and go make the band Blues Brothers style now. Movie reference. And so the third album will probably just be a journal articulation of this relationship with these human beings and what it sounds like that they live and love each other now.
You said like one album is like a statement, and then 2 albums, 2 things is fundamentally different because it creates a line. Well, 3 albums creates a space. 3 albums creates an area. It creates a shape. So that's very interesting.
And it'll be much
Yeah.
about physicality.
Physicality, yeah.
And physical spaces. And those are just like logical assumptions
Sure.
I'm making. A more concrete thing is we just don't have enough good mosh pit songs yet. So the third album, I imagine, will just be much more about mosh pits and heaviness and how do you make a crowd move?
Yeah.
How do you make a crowd jump up and down? Just very practical songwriting in that sense. Of how do you make a metal show fun, physically fun to be involved in?
Yeah.
And then I'll start with that very physical requirement, and then I'll start to understand the concepts of where do mosh pits come from? What is that tribal?
What the fuck is a mosh pit?
What is that tribal Matrix Reloaded cave orgy rave?
You should
Cave orgy rave.
You should.
What is the spirit of that?
You should call your third album Super Spreader. Fucking awesome. That'd be a great name for a punk album, honestly. Maybe like a...
I like it as a punk band name.
Punk band,
the Super Spreaders.
The Super Spreaders. Yeah, what are you spreading, you ask? What aren't we spreading?
I can go into this 9th inning on all of my Ghost in the Shell riffs I haven't even started in on yet.
Let's hear it.
It's the human spirit of progress. That's what that movie is.
Mm-hmm.
And attainment and enlightenment and breaking through to a new world. That whole movie is Major Kusanagi she's just a fucking rocket ship. Just going straight towards, she doesn't even know what she's going straight towards. She just is hearing the whisper in her ghost. And the angst of, I feel free to grow only within given limits or something, as she's like PMS ranting on the boat. She feels confined,
Right.
and she feels a direction of like, okay, catching the puppet master is like, I just have a feeling and an intuition and a drive and an exuberance for my physical life, and I'm just going straight for the goal. And then she gets there and she transcends. It's transcendence. And so it's Ghost in the Shell is using cyberpunk and cyberpunk futurism just to express the basic human spirit of pioneering transcendence.
You're just driving towards something.
Driving towards a goal, breaking through all barriers, and then her ability to do that is literally like life-saving. Like, you can, like, what are going to be the results of that new being that's in the doll's body now? Like, the net is vast and infinite. What will the newborn child do?
Yeah, the last scene where she's just gazing out over the city and it just goes like this. It pans upward and you're like, and possibilities.
It's possibility.
Yeah.
And she, the new being of her, the Major merged with the puppet master, is now so powerful that a single thought of hers is going to be like Mark Zuckerberg creating Facebook. And she's going to have like 100 of those thoughts a day.
Oh, God help us. Right.
And that's the kind of quantum leap of understanding that humanity like uses to push everyone forward. And so like with Elon Musk, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. It's the same with him. He has an instinct and a drive and just a basic yearning to look forward to something. I find it like he has he has his explanations of
Sure.
why we need to get to
He
Mars.
came up with those after the fact,
Yes, it's basically because it's
though.
fucking
Yeah,
cool.
of course.
That's the basic thing.
People don't do great things out of a sense of obligation. They do things out of a sense of
fucking
passion.
right. That's
right.
goddamn fucking right. And he speaks to that himself when he uses the Hitchhiker's Guide language, where we just need more boots on the ground and more space to think and more time to use before we go extinct to come up with bigger questions to encapsulate the answer that is the universe. To use his/Hitchhiker's Guide.
Oh, really? That's really cool. I don't think I've ever seen that him say that. That's awesome.
He just wants a bigger scope
Yeah.
for humanity to use to pose bigger questions of greater import to frame the answer of the physical universe in new ways.
Well, don't you think we should solve the problems on Earth before you...
He gets at least one SJW journalist doing that every
so when you go
interview.
like, well, you're going to try to colonize... Okay, that's great, whatever you're doing. I don't even know what you're talking about, but there's poor people still, so why are you building rockets? It's like, sorry, lady.
God damn it, I wasn't even fucking plugged in.
Oh, well, you can probably still get the audio on that. Fuck, I hope so. That was an awesome rant.
Yeah, that was a lot.
That was
Break to 144. I have some work to do.
$1 $. It's always gangster o'clock.
God fucking damn it. Peak rant and my mic was off.
I think you can still get the audio. I think it'll probably still, at least on my mic, you might be able to get it.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. I
But,
can just isolate that part of the waveform and just decibel it up.
But anyways, yeah, I'm glad I hope Elon Musk, if you're thinking
Okay,
about
so
selling...
Elon Musk is Major Kusanagi.
Mm-hmm.
He's forming explanations after the fact of becoming a multiplanetary society, so we make it through the Great Filter. No, that's bullshit. It's just because it's fucking cool and he has an itch inside. He wouldn't be happy unless he was grabbing the biggest fucking project possible and driving towards it.
In fact, I think he would be very unhappy if he weren't. He seems like he's like a monkey on his back that's like tormenting him if he's not
just
trying
like
to.
Major Kusanagi, where she doesn't understand that she's about to merge with an AI and become a third Gestalt being that is neither the Major nor Kusanagi. She might not even like go with as much speed and zest if she knew that was the destination. And I think Elon Musk is like headed for a similar completely unexpected thing. Like maybe it's like a literal Mars colony, or maybe he inadvertently discovers some nuclear fission thing that renders the entire Mars project completely irrelevant.
I'm really surprised they haven't redirected their resources towards like nuclear fusion yet. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future, because that's a totally solvable problem. It just requires actual engineering culture that's capable of iterating on designs and not throwing $10 billion at a massive, whatever it is, ITAR, or whatever the current project is. But in any case.
Well, he just goes by his own tastes. And like, he likes rockets.
Right.
He's going to build rockets.
Right.
Like someone else can care about nuclear fusion.
Yeah, rockets poetically they're very poetic because they're like a vehicle outside of they're like the final frontier and all that.
Yeah.
It's a very concrete steel rocket fuel kind of like oh that was my phone.
I know, I was just checking when my movie is
my good buddy
starting.
Oh. Yeah, when is anyways.
Okay, last Ghost in the Shell bits.
I really hope we got that fucking rant on the audio because that was fucking. I feel like it's better than the movie, actually.
Well, the movie it's like Space Odyssey. The movie is just a neutral egg of potential, and it's for you to create off it, just like Space Odyssey. And it doesn't like I was noting the lack of humor in this movie, and like every movie, like the more like far out into like concepts it gets with modern movies, the more obligation they feel to like break the fourth wall and like do some like elbow jabbing joke at the audience, like, isn't this crazy? Yeah, like we're having a good time, right?
Nervous laugh, yeah.
And this one does not cater to the audience at all. It's just like, this is just happening. We're not going to explain any of this to you. We're just going to show you this world.
It assumes you're there because you want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. It's like movies like Ghost in the Shell inadvertently solve the gender tensions by transcending them completely.
And by just like talking about things that are like more interesting, and
Yes.
that like you, yeah. I don't think I really thought about the gender of the characters once. It didn't even strike me as weird that the puppet master had a masculine voice after being in a female body. I was just like, oh, like it never even occurred to me.
Yes, and
Right.
yeah, and that's like way more powerful in terms of like freeing us from the patriarchal hegemony of.
Well, when you're obsessed with something, you're under its power.
Yes.
If you really want to get over something, stop thinking about it.
Yes, and just get on with something
Get
interesting.
on with something else and get those things out of your way, and then you might find at some point that,
And then you'll just
right.
accidentally express some transgenderism ideal.
Yeah,
Which Ghost in the Shell did. Like
very much so.
It showed complete freedom of gender, and by just completely lifting up the individual pioneering spirit, and it was just a completely side issue that the ultimate union of these two different gods was also like a man in a woman's body taking over another woman's body while the woman went into the man/woman's body, and there were just these two naked androids having a telepathic conversation with each
like
other.
in the all throughout the movie where she just for some reason like strips down before she like kicks everyone's ass, like just have like she has like a machine gun and like anime titties and is like killing a bunch of policemen in masks, and like the other like male characters are just like, nice shot. Like they're whatever, like just like we're so far in the future that just like I see tits every day, like we don't even fuck with clothes anymore, like gender, like okay, yeah, it's somehow they're not hung up about it. There isn't like wow, you as a strong female android character,
yes, queen, you
like,
go. You're
like,
so brave for bearing your body.
Yeah, like that was a victory for women everywhere. Like, okay, I think it's just there is something more like it makes you feel more comfortable when people can take things in stride without being so like pointedly fixated, because that betrays like an anxiety or nervousness or kind of modern society.
It completely depends on apologism and guilt.
Apologism, yeah.
That's the entire thing. Fueling it is a guilt thing of someone else is in need right now, so how dare you speak on a platform? It's
the state religion guilt, right?
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Ghost in the Shell. Her boat conversation about she was like gesturing with her language at the magnificence of what man has achieved technologically, and saying like, we can drink all these fucking beers and chemical implants in our body are going to break down the alcohol and keep us from getting drunk, and as soon as man conceives of an idea, he physically instantiates it as if it's damn near instinctual, in her words. And where the fuck was I going with that? And she goes on to say, like, who cares if we need high-level maintenance at regular intervals to get tune-ups, because our bodies are so robustly mechanical. I wouldn't give this up for anything. Like, we're here, we might as well embrace it.
It's like it's like the antithesis of Ludditism.
Yes, it's like, fuck it, let's just go faster.
Right.
And that was a very crucial piece I needed in my own life to carry forward with my art, because music and heavy metal is completely about the physicality of it for me. It's all about the heavy metal show. It's all about mosh pits. It's all about sweat and being on a floor of a venue with 200 other people packed in like fucking sardines, and the music subsumes the band and the audience both and moves all of you. And so there's a serious conflict there when to carry forward with the art that Ada and I needed to make, we just had to make computer music. We're still making computer music. This is not real. The only like real thing happening that you're hearing is my human voice. Everything else, including the voice, is totally mediated / created by computers.
It's kind of fucking awesome in its own way, though.
And so there's a real conflict there of like, I was trying to reverse engineer a human feeling back into the music after we made it with computers. And I needed to like let that go after a certain point. And Ghost in the Shell helped me do that. Like, actually, fuck it. This is computer music. I'm going to make it sound like computer music. Like, I'm just going to embrace where I am.
These are the tools you have.
Like, this is 2 people and a producer. I might as well, like, allow it to sound like 2 people and a producer.
Yeah.
Because this I might not ever be in this situation again.
I think once you start playing shows and having mosh pits, you're going to probably enjoy that too much to stop doing it.
Yeah. I will not often return to computerized music because I am so hell-bent on the physicality of heavy metal.
Right.
Yeah, maybe we're good.
Yeah, man, let's call it. That was a fucking awesome rant to end on.
Cool.